Now it is time to talk about the main event. We have Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes for the featherweight title. And this is such an interesting fight for me personally. I feel like there's a bit of a narrative out there that I don't necessarily agree with. I think a lot of people are underestimating Diego Lopes, but I also can understand why most of the MMA community is rooting for Alexander Volkanovski, because I think that we all like a comeback story. We love what Volkanovski has been able to do in his MMA career. It's been incredibly impressive, but I also think that fans are being very, very delusional. And if I'm being honest with myself, I have not had such a strong feeling about a fight since the Dricus du Plessis Adesanya fight, where I told you guys that Dricus was gonna break Israel Adesanya in that fight. I mean, I've had other incredible predictions. I mean, I predicted that Imavov was gonna beat Israel Adesanya in a fight where people were saying, no, Imavov is not at the level of Adesanya, and I told you guys, look, that might be true, but momentum is a real thing, and some of these fighters are able to capitalize on holes of these legends. Like, obviously Mavov was able to capitalize on a hole of Israel Adesanya's game, and I think here Diego Lopes is going to be able to capitalize on some of Volkanovski's weaknesses, plus the fact that Volkanovski's 36 years old. He's coming off two bad knockout losses. There's no way his durability is going to be where it should be. And then you're fighting somebody like Diego Lopes, who's incredibly dangerous. And I see guys like Lucas Tracy talking about how in shape Volk is for this camp. And I mean, we heard that in the Adesanya fight as well. So I feel like every time we hear how great of a camp a fighter had, they typically tend to lose. Plus the way Volkanovski has been talking in most of his interviews, kind of discussing the losses to Topuria and Makhachev, I don't get a good vibe from it. I feel like Volkanovski is kind of coping when it comes to those losses. He's saying, oh, nobody can beat me in a 5-round fight. You know, I just got caught by Makhachev. I just got caught by Topuria. Even though we're being honest, like Makhachev and Topuria were able to capitalize on Volkanovski's weaknesses. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they just threw some funky ass punch and it just landed on Volkanovski's chin. Like, those were very calculated type of knockouts. And, you know, I just think that Volkanovski, I don't know where his confidence is at going into this fight. I mean, I know that he can, you know, look very confident in the countdowns and in some of the interviews, but I feel like I don't know how that's going to translate once he's in that octagon after not fighting for a year, fighting somebody as dangerous as Diego Lopes, because I do believe that Lopes is not more skilled than Volkanovski, but I feel like he possesses traits that are incredibly dangerous for Volk, especially at this point in his career. It's not that I don't think Volk can win this fight, but that it is, besides the Topuria fight, the scariest fight you can take at that point in your career. And I see fans talking about this fight like if it is a given that we will see the same confident Volk. None of them are considering a potential Volk decline, and I can only hope Lopes will get the credit for this win. If Lopez wins, the narrative is going to be, oh, Volkanovski was washed. Like, Lopez is not that good. It's just that Volkanovski is washed. Even though damn well you picked Volkanovski knowing all of these factors. If Volk pulls this off, I truly believe it will be one of his best wins in his career. And I believe that the odds are stacked against Volk. And I will eat my words after UFC 314 if Volk is able to pull this off, because like I said, I truly do believe that Volkanovski is going to lose this fight. And another thing, people talk about Volk like if he's as defensively sound as Islam Makhachev on the feet, when Volk is quite hittable, guys. I mean, Volk, he has fought guys like Ortega, Max Holloway, Jair Rodriguez, and he's been hitting those fights, but Volk has been incredibly durable at 145, and we don't know how he's gonna look at this point in his career. And I truly do believe that Lopez and Topuria have different kind of power at 145 pounds. And I'm not saying that Lopez has the same type of power as Topuria, because I do think maybe Topuria is a little bit more technical in the way he goes about it with his boxing combinations, and maybe Diego Lopez has a bit more of that raw power, even though he's not as technically sound as somebody like Topuria. But I still believe that these are two of the most powerful featherweights we have ever seen. And even though, you know, Volkanovski has beat Max Holloway and he's beat someone like Yair Rodriguez, who at the time, I remember a lot of people were saying that Yair Rodriguez was an incredibly dangerous fight for Alexander Volkanovski, even though myself, you guys can go back and watch one of my earliest videos, I said Volkanovski was going to dominate Yair Rodriguez because Yair Rodriguez has a massive hole in his game, which is his strength, his takedown defense. He's never been good off his back. And I just thought that he was going to lose against Alexander Volkanovski. And I think a lot of people are kind of expecting or comparing Diego Lopez to Yair Rodriguez when they're very different. Like, Diego Lopez is a very strong guy. He's not an easy guy to take down. Now, I do think that if Volkanovski is able to tire him out, maybe a little bit on the feet, maybe frustrate him on the feet, and yeah, those takedowns do open up for Volkanovski. But like, I don't think Diego Lopez is Yair. And maybe I will eat my words after UFC 314, but I don't understand the comparison. I mean, we just saw what Diego Lopez was able to do to Brian Ortega. I mean, he basically knocked him out in the first round and then woke him up with the follow-up shot. It was incredible. And then even in that third round, he almost finished him again. And if we're being honest with ourselves, there's no way at this point in Volkanovski's career he can take the type of punishment that Brian Ortega took in that fight. If at any point in this fight, which I think there will be a point at this fight, if Diego Lopez lands that same type of combo, an uppercut, a left hook in Volkanovski's chin, there is no way I see Volkanovski surviving. Now let's talk about that Dan Ige fight that people love to bring up when discussing why Volkanovski is going to beat Diego Lopez. One thing, I don't see people mention this, and I get it. When it's somebody's favorite fighters, they like to mention the circumstances going into the fight. But if we're being honest, Diego Lopez was not supposed to fight at UFC 303. That was a fight that got announced on, I want to say, less than 2 weeks notice for that Conor McGregor versus Chandler card that fell off to fight Brian Ortega. So it was already short notice as it is. A fight against Brian Ortega at UFC 303. Then Brian Ortega pulls out of the fight the day of the fight. Diego Lopez has to make weight again at UFC 303. Dan Ige was already preparing for a fight. I get it. He was also stepping off the couch. He also wasn't able to game plan. And then he fought Diego Lopez. And Diego Lopez gets a lot of criticism for that performance when, like, dude, look at the circumstances. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I get it. The guy gassed out, and I'm not saying that there's not things you can take away from that fight that Volkanovski can implement in his fight against Diego Lopez, but I don't think it's a big enough sample size to all of a sudden say, oh, Diego Lopez has terrible cardio. You know what I'm saying? Like, people talk about Diego Lopez as if he's just completely gassing out, and I get it. He slows down in fights, but I don't think it's really going to matter if Volkanovski is very hesitant on the feet. If he's kind of afraid to engage, that's really going to play to the pace of Diego Lopez in this fight. Like, I just don't see if Diego Lopez, I mean, if Volkanovski gets in Diego Lopez's face and starts exchanging, he's gonna get knocked out, man, because Diego Lopez is also a very effective counter striker. And like I said, you just can't trade with someone like Diego Lopez in the pocket. Volkanovski has a huge head. I don't know, man. I see a lot of people pointing to that Dan Ige fight where I get it. You could kind of look at the fact that Dan Ige was able to control him. I believe in that third round was able to take him down and kind of slow down Diego Lopez. And you could see kind of Diego Lopez getting very, very tired in that fight. But you also have to take those circumstances into consideration. Now, I know you're going to say, well, based MMA, why are you not taking that same, I guess, awareness or that same logic and apply to Volkanovski's losses? Like, yeah, he kind of fought, you know, very quickly after the Makhachev loss. Obviously, the Makhachev knockout loss was on 10 days notice for Volkanovski. Well, the reason why I don't bring that up is because, well, I'm actually bringing it up. The reason why I guess I don't emphasize that is because, first of all, the way Makhachev knocked out Volkanovski, it was in the first round, right? So it wasn't like Volkanovski was actually starting to gas out, and the fact that he didn't have a training camp started to play a role in that fight. It's not like we saw that. And then in the fight against Topuria, I mean, it was a combination that no version of Volk would have ate. That's the truth. That's really what it comes down to. It really comes down to Volkanovski has to be perfect in this fight, while Diego Lopez, I think he could lose a couple rounds and still have that finishing threat to, at any point in the fight, finish Volkanovski, which I think makes it an incredibly dangerous fight. And like I said, I think a lot of people are kind of blinded by their fandom or their, I guess, them being such a big fans of Volkanovski. I myself have fallen for that as well in the past with some predictions. But if you look at the fight logically, where both these fighters are at this point in their career, Diego Lopez is going up, Volkanovski is going down. I think it's just a perfect opportunity, the perfect time for someone like Diego Lopez to knock out Alexander Volkanovski. It just seems like it's destiny at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, no one can hate Volkanovski, and I don't want you guys to think that, oh, you hate Volkanovski, you think he's gonna lose, you think he sucks, Diego Lopez is not as good, he doesn't have that good of a resume. I completely agree with that, but like I said, I have to take these circumstances into my prediction. I now do. I mean, I took those circumstances in my prediction against Adesanya. You know, I thought he was gonna lose against Imavov. It turned out to be correct. And I think we're such fans of these legends, and this definitely feels like a passing of the guard, that we want to root for guys like Volkanovski. We want to root for guys like Israel Adesanya. But I do believe that Lopez is just the worst fight at this point in Volkanovski's career, where I wish he would have fought Mosvar Evloev, because at least I feel like there's not that finishing threat from Mosvar, and I think Volkanovski, it's a fight where I think he can gain his confidence back and then maybe fight someone like Diego Lopez, where you know, okay, I'm durable, I'm strong, I'm still as fast as I used to be, while now he's coming off two horrible knockout losses, and now you're going to be tested against Diego Lopez, who's, I think, top 3 hardest hitters at 145 pounds. Like, I just don't think it's the best idea. And when you look at Volkanovski's wins over Holloway, Ortega, Yair, like, those guys are not really known for power. Like, Holloway's a volume striker, he's not really known for power. Brian Ortega is a BJJ guy who definitely has improved his striking, but he doesn't have power. Now, even Yair, somebody who we kind of consider as very unpredictable, right? I remember at the time people were saying, oh, Yair is such a dangerous matchup for Volk because he's so unpredictable, he throws head kicks and all this shit. But if we're being honest with ourselves, Yair Rodriguez doesn't have like crazy power. Like, yes, he's very versatile, he's unpredictable, he could absolutely knock you out, but I don't think he has the raw power of someone like Diego Lopez. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think Diego Lopez is as weak and as fragile when it comes to his takedown defense as someone like Yair Rodriguez, guys. So ultimately, guys, I have to go with Diego Lopez to knock out Alexander Volkanovski. It pains me to say, obviously, like I said, I think there's a path here for Volkanovski, but when I look at the circumstances around this fight, I just have to pick with my brain, and my brain tells me that Diego Lopez is able to find a punch, a knee at some point in this fight. And I think, you know, there could be a chance that Volkanovski looks really good early on, and at some point Lopez, you know, he's very durable, he has a lot of grit. I think he's very focused going into this fight as well. Like, Diego Lopez has been thinking about Alexander Volkanovski, while Volkanovski has been thinking about Topuria, the rematch, getting that back, getting his confidence back, while Diego Lopez has been laser focused on getting that Volkanovski fight. That also concerns me going into this fight. The fact that, I don't know, man, it just feels like all the stars are aligned for Diego Lopez to win this fight. And like I said, some of the narratives that I see, because honestly, I've been trying to be convinced that Volkanovski is going to win this fight. I mean, I watched Lucas Tracy's prediction, and honestly, it just seemed kind of like a Volk glaze. Like, respectfully to Lucas Tracy, it just sounded like Volk glaze, whereas if you look at the circumstances, the X's and O's of this fight, I just think it's the worst fight for Volkanovski at this point. And like I said, I don't think Volkanovski is necessarily the worst fighter, but I just think that, I mean, Volkanovski has been shown to get dropped. I mean, he got dropped by Max Holloway in the rematch. He's been dropped by Chad Mendes. It's not like these guys just don't hit Volk at 145 pounds and that Topuria was the first guy to hit Volk. No, I mean, he also got dropped by Islam Makhachev in the first fight. I mean, Topuria was already landing some counters in the first and the beginning of the second round before the knockout blow. So it's not like Volkanovski is some guy that's not hittable, you know what I'm saying? And Volk just has a huge head, and I just cannot picture this fight where Volk doesn't get hit by Lopez. I just can't see that, you know what I'm saying? And maybe, like I said, maybe I'll be wrong, maybe I'll eat my words after UFC 314. I'll come back and say, you know what, guys, I was wrong. Volkanovski still got it, he's still that man, he absolutely dominated Diego Lopez, and I will completely admit that. But if I'm being honest, guys, I just don't see a way that Volkanovski doesn't get dropped by Diego Lopez at some point in this fight.